Coming up,
Door blew off the Alaska flight, and that blew the doors off Boeing.
the corporate crash of an aviation giant.
You're cutting corners. You are eliminating safety procedures. For your workers, they're in peril. For your whistleblowers, they literally fear for their lives.
The Boeing boss says the company will fly high again.
I am proud of every action we have taken.
But the whistleblowers
Blatant negligence.
Lives are at stake. We have to speak up.
and the families of the victims disagree. Did Boeing kill your daughter?
Yeah, they're murderers.
Not so long ago, many airline passengers used to swear by the saying, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. Unsurprisingly, it was a motto the company loved. But oh, how times have changed. Now the slogan has become, if it's Boeing, I'm not going. Last Tuesday, the plane maker's humiliation was plain for the world to see when its boss was forced to appear in front of angry US senators in Washington. Dave Calhoun was grilled about the company's plague of deadly safety and manufacturing issues. And worryingly for anyone who flies, his answers showed that the turbulence for Boeing is a long way from over. For generations, Boeing was a source of pride in American ingenuity and, most importantly, safety. But these days, it's a company in crisis.
Yes, we are emergency. We are depressurized. We do need to return back to. We have 177 passengers.
In January this year, when a door blew off one of its 737 MAX jets 10 minutes into the flight.
We deeply regret the impact that the Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 accident had on
Trust in Boeing was shattered yet again. And it was just a matter of luck no one was sitting in row 26.
We are thankful that there were no fatalities. From the beginning, we took responsibility and cooperated transparently in their respective investigations.
But those investigations were damning, revealing a shocking and simple, yet inexcusable mistake. 4 bolts that held the door in place had been removed during maintenance and never put back.
I mean, that had to be a terrifying situation.
Roy Irvin says it's lucky they didn't lose the entire plane and everyone on it. And he'd know. He's a retired quality inspector on the 787 Dreamliner program, but wasn't surprised when he heard of the frightening mid-air emergency. Passengers across the world flying these planes every day. Should they be thinking twice before boarding a Boeing jet?
I think so, yeah. And I do now, especially after the door blowout. The door blowout I could really relate to with simply not installing a safety device or missing a bolt and not even documenting the removal is something that we would see on a daily basis as investigators when I was there.
Roy's now one of many whistleblowers so fed up he's exposing unsafe practices at the company. And what they've been saying has had serious effect. Their testimonies have led to Boeing's chief executive, Dave Calhoun, last Tuesday being hauled before the US Senate, accused of presiding over not just a broken safety culture, but one of intimidation and cover-ups.
I believe strongly in accountability.
And it's not just the Senate. Federal prosecutors are also about to decide whether to criminally charge Boeing for breaching a deferred prosecution agreement, a promise to clean up its act.
Some of the guys that I worked with, I would consider a menace to society.
Roy's job was to inspect planes at the end of the Boeing production line. When they got to him, the aircraft should have been ready for takeoff. What's the worst your team found?
Not properly installed hydraulic fittings for the hydraulic system, loose hardware on gear rotary actuator for the flap system. Bolts had never been tightened down all the way. Fuel leaks. Another big thing that we worked for a long time was main pins for the horizontal stabilizer. That could have been a safety of flight issue had that not been corrected.
Why were those mistakes happening along the production of those aircraft?
They didn't want to have to wait on quality. They were in a hurry all the time to get the airplane moved from finished and moved from one position to the next.
So if you're slowing them down, you're costing them money.
Yes, time and money, yes.
It was the pressure, it was the speed that they were trying to push the inspectors to that created that culture where people started to miss.
Santiago Paredes is another whistleblower who's had enough. He was a former quality inspector for Boeing's main supplier, Spirit Aerosystems, and was responsible for inspecting the aircraft fuselages before they were delivered to Boeing.
We were the last set of eyes that would look at the plane before we shipped it.
How often would you find problems at the last minute?
Oh, every day, every fuselage, every day. On the sections that I inspected, I was finding anywhere from 100 to 200 defects.
What defects, what problems were you finding at the end of the line?
Missing fasteners, missing parts not being installed, parts being damaged, people stepping on parts and damaging them, missing seal, damaged seal, missing nuts on bolts. I mean, anything that you can think when it comes to sheet metal, any kind of defect, you were probably finding it at the end of the line every day.
The pressure on Santiago was enormous. When he tried to do the right thing, he was ordered to fudge the numbers, or he'd be punished.
They told me to falsify the quantity of the defects that were being found in there.
So they asked you to doctor the books. What did they make you write?
When I was finding 100 defects, it was affecting how their budget was being spent. So they wanted me to just say that it was one defect. I stood up, I said no. It was unethical what they were asking me. And then my second level manager came in and he said, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, I'm gonna write you up for insubordination. I know that the repercussions of subordination was to be fired.
Incredibly, Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun admits managers did retaliate against workers who spoke up, but he's adamant that behaviour will now stop.
Our culture is far from perfect, but we are taking action and we are making progress. We understand the gravity, and we're committed to moving forward with transparency and accountability.
At his Senate interrogation, he defended Boeing's broken safety culture in front of grieving families. Each one lost loved ones in 2 deadly crashes, Lion Air 610 in 2018 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 5 months later. Back then, Boeing promised the families and the world it would change its ways.
We are sorry, deeply and truly sorry.
But despite 2 apologies from 2 CEOs,
And I apologize for the grief that we have caused.
Michael Stumo will never forgive Boeing. Did Boeing kill your daughter?
Yeah, they're murderers.
Samia Stumo was 24 when she became a victim of Boeing's fatal engineering flaws, when the 2 brand new 737 MAX aircraft death dived, killing all 346 passengers on board.
She was beautiful, charismatic, lit up the room. She just had it all.
Today, their families are still fighting to hold Boeing to account.
We've become a force among the aviation lobby and the aviation policy sphere in the U.S. You protect your kids, and anyone who threatens or harms them, you go at them.
Michael and the others might finally get what they want because the US Justice Department is considering criminally prosecuting Boeing. It claims the plane maker breached a deferred prosecution agreement it struck to escape charges over the deadly crashes. 3 years ago, it paid a $2.5 billion fine and promised to clean up its safety procedures. But the Alaska Airlines incident earlier this year, just days before the deal expired, meant Boeing was back in trouble.
It felt like they had it going on again. And then the Alaska flight had an explosive depressurization, and the door blew off the Alaska flight, and that blew the doors off Boeing again.
Captain Dennis Tasia flies commercially for American Airlines and represents hundreds of pilots at the Allied Pilots Association. He has grave concerns about the safety and manufacturing of the Boeing aircraft he's flying, especially its 737 MAX jets.
I trust the machine. I do not trust the people who provided it to me.
Is Boeing putting too much pressure on you and other pilots?
Oh, clearly. They have decided that anything that they've screwed up, the last line of defense is going to be the pilots.
Captain Tasia says Boeing's crisis began because the company wanted to save money. It installed software, known as MCAS, into its 737 MAX aircraft, but didn't tell the pilots. Tragically, it was a flawed system that led to the 2018 and 2019 crashes.
They said, let's not tell the pilots or the airlines about this thing called MCAS because we don't want to trigger more pilot training because that costs money. It was horrid.
Why was MCAS so fatal?
When that one instrument came in and fed the bad data in, a myriad of alerts went off. Stick shaker was happening right after takeoff, and an MCAS came in. It was new, and it pushed the nose down with a force and a speed we had never seen before. It continued that over and over again, and it would do it until it killed you.
You accept that Boeing was responsible for those crashes and 346
I
deaths?
accept that MCAS and Boeing are responsible for those crashes. Yes, sir.
It's clear the once revered aviation giant is facing its biggest challenge in decades. And, as you'll see, several legal cases are looming, with not just Boeing, but its executives in their sights. Do you believe someone should be going to jail over these crashes?
100%.
Roy Irvin loves planes, and there was a time when he especially loved Boeing planes.
The airplane is the ultimate machine. The 787 program that I worked on, it was just a phenomenal piece of engineering.
He used to work as a quality control investigator for Boeing until he quit in disgust. These days, the only planes he trusts are the ones he's built himself.
I would rather fly in a smaller airplane. I've never cared much for flying commercially anyway, but I'm going to do it as little as possible now.
Roy says the work he witnessed on the job was alarming and potentially catastrophic, and he's not alone. Whistleblowers have become so vocal, the US government has called a Senate inquiry, where, on Capitol Hill, politicians are scathing.
We've had multiple whistleblowers come before this committee and allege that Boeing is cutting every possible corner on quality and safety, not just in the past, but now. That doesn't sound like attention to quality to me, and yet you're getting paid $33 million a year. It's extraordinary.
Senator,
That's Boeing's outgoing CEO, Dave Calhoun, grilled over whistleblower claims of safety lapses.
You're not focused on safety. You're trying to squeeze every piece of profit you can out of this company. You're strip mining Boeing. It was one of the greatest American companies ever.
Senator, I don't recognize any of the Boeing you described.
You don't recognize the Boeing that has airplanes falling out of the sky?
I'm proud of our
this
safety record, and I am
You're proud of
very
this safety record.
of our Boeing people.
You're proud of this safety record?
I am proud of every action we have taken.
Every action you've taken?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Wow. There's some news for you. Well, behind you, the folks are showing pictures of the people who are the victims of your safety record.
Among them was Michael Stumo, the father of Ethiopian Airlines crash victim, 24-year-old Samya Stumo. He isn't buying Boeing's spin. How do you sit in those hearings and listen to that testimony, feeling the way you feel?
It's our job. You have to do it. We need to get accountability. We need to get justice. We need no third crash. But it feels terrible. It's exhausting.
Excuses are also wearing thin for veteran pilot Captain Dennis Tasia, who says, as well as safety flaws, there's a culture of cover-up. He believes Boeing is still hiding vital information, even from pilots.
I've been flying Boeing airplanes for most of my career. I flew it in the military, in combat. Boeing airplanes saved my life. They protected me from the enemy outside the airplane. Now I feel like the enemy is within.
Are pilots being deceived?
We are not being told everything. The FAA puts out a notice, an airworthiness directive, and unless it specifically says, tell the pilots about this problem, we never hear about it.
The Federal Aviation Administration, America's industry watchdog, is supposed to keep Boeing accountable and the flying public safe, but even it's admitted to being too hands-off.
The FAA is an accomplice in this. The institutions have morphed themselves. Boeing got laws to change. The FAA lost its way. They became a delegator instead of a regulator.
Captain Tasia flies the 737 MAX, and while Boeing fixed the deadly MCAS software, which was responsible for those 2 crashes, disturbingly, other engineering flaws still exist today, and they're often buried in paperwork.
We have an engine anti-ice system. It heats up the engine during icing.
In freezing conditions, it stops ice forming on the engine, but in the MAX, there's a time limit, and it can overheat.
After 5 minutes, the heat that goes on that cowling can cause the engine to come apart. Pieces of it can penetrate the aircraft and injure passengers who are sitting behind the wing, or it could cause the aircraft to have to do an off-airport landing. Off-airport. That's a cornfield or the Hudson River somewhere. So in the meantime, I'm putting up an old Post-it note to remind me that when I turn the engine anti-ice on, I've got 5 minutes in clear air. I've got to have that off.
That's not the only design issue you're dealing with at the moment, is it?
There's a problem with wire bundles that run through the wing. They control flight controls called spoilers. There's chafing in those misassembled wires. They're in the wrong place. That chafing causes shortage, and what they found was these spoilers on one set of the wings can just flash up with uncommanded, as they call it. So this big barn door is hanging out there. It causes the airplane to roll. I've got to maneuver the airplane back to level flight.
The aircraft Dennis pilots are allowed to continue flying despite their problems. And that's because the FAA has given Boeing years to fix them. It's a situation that worries a lot of pilots.
We're not here to crush the aviation system. We're here to ensure that it's done safely, and when there's fixes that need to happen, they're done in a reasonable amount of time.
Now, the fact remains air travel is the safest form of transport, and Boeing claims that comes down to the over-engineering they do on their planes. But that won't be enough to take the heat off the company's past failures. The US Justice Department has 2 weeks to decide whether to criminally prosecute Boeing over the fatal crashes, and Boeing's legal woes don't end there. Whistleblowers are suing over their mistreatment. For some, the toll it's taken has been devastating.
You're putting a lot at risk. I mean, these folks have families they're supporting. This is their main source of income. And, you know, they've seen other employees that have been terminated or demoted or given a hard time.
US Attorney Brian Knowles has witnessed the pain. His client, 62-year-old John Barnett, former quality control engineer, was a powerful voice in the fight against Boeing until, tragically, he couldn't take it any longer. Did it cost him his life?
It did. The man had been diagnosed with PTSD. He was having nightmares about planes crashing, and it pushed him over the edge. He was not only a client, he was my friend. He was a man of high integrity and ethics.
The planemaker says it's finally listening. As part of the commitment to change, CEO Calhoun will step down at the end of the year. It's a moment of reckoning for Boeing, and it's fair to say there's no more room for failure.
Our airplanes have carried the equivalent of more than double the population of the planet. We're part of a global ecosystem composed of manufacturers, suppliers, airlines, airports, air traffic controllers, and regulators. And they're all committed to learning from every incident. It is this relentless focus on improvement that has led to our industry's unparalleled safety record.
But while doing better may regain the flying public's trust, it can never make up for the deaths of 346 people. The families won't stop until Boeing or its executives are prosecuted. Do you believe someone should be going to jail over these crashes?
100%, and we're not giving up the fight. Boeing's going to be around, and I want them to be a quality company and forget about the shareholder and build fantastic, safe, quality aircraft. That's who they need. But as long as there's bozos that lie, they gotta go.
Hello, I'm Adam Hegarty. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.